Preparing.
Ready?
All right. And so we are live on YouTube.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I appreciate you all coming on, being a part of this important message that we have from our National Action Network, Middle Tennessee, and my name is Cheryl Huff, and I am the president of the Middle Tennessee National Action Network. And we are coming today to discuss and talk about issues that we're having here in Nashville with our voter suppression, with the voter suppression and what has happened to us here in Nashville. And so we got together with some phenomenal people that will bring some information and bring this to you guys live right here on this setting. And I appreciate everyone coming out. And I'm now going to turn it over to our wonderful, lovely Miss Christina Laster, our with Bold Enterpriser, and our policy and legislative person right now. So thank you so much for participating. And Christina, take it away.
All right. So thank you, everyone, and welcome. I appreciate you all being here. And so we are going to start with a powerful story about what is going on in Tennessee, something that you guys really need to be tuned into and listening to. And so I'm going to introduce Sheila Clemens Lee to talk about her story and to let you guys know how she has been impacted. Sheila?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Like she said, my name is Sheila Clemens Lee. I am the mother of Jacquees Clemens, who was murdered by Officer Joshua Lippert on February 10th, 2017. After Officer Lippert wasn't charged with Jacquees' murder, a group of people got together and we became CON, which was Community Oversight Now. And I kept asking them, what can we do? And someone had brought up the fact that we could start a community oversight board. That way the police would quit policing themselves. So as we began to start advocating for that, we held many town hall meetings. We went door to door educating people what the Community Oversight Board would be able to do and everything. Then every step of the way, the FOP, which is the Fraternal Order of Police, kept trying to stop us from getting this board. We had to go to the Election Commission, stand before their board, and they voted unanimously to go ahead and approve getting the going through the votes for the people for Community Oversight Board. And as we're doing that, getting the signatures and everything, approximately 15 months later, a young man by the name of Daniel Hambrick was murdered by another officer named Delphi. That inspired us to work even harder to get these signatures. We went door to door, different parts of neighborhoods, not just in North Nashville and East Nashville. We went all over Nashville. And people came out on November the 6th of 2018 and voted for this board because people apparently was tired. I've never seen so many people in my life the way that they were out voting for this Community Oversight Board. A lot of people were happy about that. I know I was one of them because I knew now that we had someone watching us because the police was just doing too much. Now that the board is in jeopardy of not being in existence, that doesn't sit well with me. Um, because now they're going to be able to do once again what they want to do and get away with it practically. At least with the board, we knew that, we had someone on our side, the community side at that, you know, and that's who the people were trusting. It wasn't the police that they were trusting, it was the community oversight board. And so to take it away, it is just devastating. It really is. We fought so hard for this board. I know that people had said that they had been trying to get a board for over 50 something years. And, that says a lot. It really does, that we were able to accomplish that board.
So I'm here. I'm just waiting for other people to come on. So Ms. Clemens, we'll probably have you to just tell us how you feel and what you want to see happen with what they're doing to the oversight a little later into the message. And I just want to talk about one of the cases that I dealt with in 2000 and I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. No, 3 or 4 years. A situation that happened. I had a young lady to come down. I was then the first vice president down with the NAACP. And I had a young lady to come. She was a mother and she brought her mother to the branch and she cried. I sat there for 4 hours talking with her and she told me about her son. She told me who he was. She told me what he did and she told me everything about her son. And what she said was that her son was shot in the back of the head with a security guard shot him in the back of the head. But the security guard said that he had the people at the pharmacy burger was in jeopardy. And the mother told me it was okay to tell her story because she's in Flint, Michigan, and she works at the plant. So she wasn't able to get on. She was going to try to get on, but she couldn't. So I'm going to tell her story because I was the one that initial complaint came to. And so she kept going around to everybody trying to get help for her son's death. And a lot of the attorneys didn't hear her and nothing happened. And so when she came in there, we sat in there for 4 hours and she told me her story. And when she was telling me, I was hearing the stuff that she wasn't saying. And at the time, this young man was a security officer. And so we went back and I called the attorney Kimbrough. And I asked her, I said, can you please just hear this lady? Just look into it. She was like, I really don't have time, but I'll do what I can. So she went to the DA's office and she asked them for the video. And the assistant DA told her that everything was good, that she believed what this security officer said. And in the meanwhile, the assistant DA told this security guard that he needs to go and apply to become a police officer. And while this was happening, he went to go apply and became a Metro police officer. And when he became a police officer, they ignored all of the red flags that he had. We went on his Facebook page, we went on everything, and it was really, really, really bad what was all on there. But then we went back. So she got the video and saw everything that happened on this video. And it showed that the security guard lied. The assistant DA told them that they were not going to fight him and it was over with. And so once again, this is the police taking care of the police, and because he became a police officer. And so when she went and saw this, and now she opened up the case back up, found out that this young man one of his Facebook page said, we're gonna take, he said, when you want to shoot and kill someone, you have to plant your feet, you have to aim your gun, and you have to shoot them in the back of the head. And that's exactly what he did to Mr. D'Angelo Knox. He did exactly that. And he said that D'Angelo was waving a gun and he was shooting in the audience, in the air, and all of the people was on the back porch. Well, when they viewed the video, none of that was true. And so now he has been indicted. We tried to find out why was he hired and what's the procedures of being hired when you have these charges against you. And so everybody was throwing the ball at the other person. Well, he went through here and he went through there and whatever happened. But this is another reason why the COB was so important, because of what happened, because they take care of themselves and they make sure if something happened, then they can cover it up. So that's why I wanted you all to know that story and why the COB and what that team is doing out here to make everything for us to be aware of what's happening and all of the complaints and stuff that's happening here in Nashville, Tennessee. So yeah.
To that,
can I make an announcement?
Okay. Can't hear you.
I'm going to make an announcement. And as soon as I make this announcement, excuse me, Jill, I'm so sorry. Then we'll go ahead and go to you. So those of you that are watching from our live YouTube or the NAN Facebook page, if you have questions or feedback or stories that you would like to share, please go ahead and drop those into the comment field. We are monitoring those pages and we'll be, responding to you. I just wanted you guys to know that we are paying attention to those other platforms by which you're viewing. If you're viewing on LinkedIn, you could do the same thing. And so now with that, I'll turn to Jill. And Jill, if you could introduce yourself for our audience, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Oh, hi, I'm Jill Fitcher, the Executive Director of the Community Oversight Board. And I just wanted to add, and I appreciate Cheryl bringing that story up because there's two things. Number one, that officer is named Nathan Glass, and he was hired after this. Although he had shot and killed someone, they still hired him on the police department. And once this case came about from the NAACP and Ms. Huff and Joy Kimbrough, what happened was those people that were working on this case were fired. He stayed on the police department for a good while, and then he was indicted. And so currently he's indicted on a first-degree homicide. And then secondly, I wanted to say that out of this complaint from the NAACP, we were able to, the NAACP requested that we do a policy advisory report on hiring practices of MMPD. And so we were able to do a really deep dive into their hiring practices and help change policy within the Metropolitan Police Departments as it pertains to the hiring and retention of officers. So it was important if Cheryl and the NAACP and Joy Kimbrough and the president at the time, Ms. Gwen, if they hadn't brought that information to us, we would have had no knowledge of this case at all.
Yeah, that's because it was hidden and no one would help her. And once the assistant DA gave her view, then they closed the case and it was done. But when we listen, and all it takes is really to listen to people, and they kept telling her that she was a grieving mother and we hear you, but they said what they said and that's the end of it. And that's because nobody really heard what she didn't say. And that's when I heard what she didn't say, that's when I brought the attorney on and said, please just look into it. And if it's nothing, then we'll let her know. And when she looked into it, it was something. So it's really, really bad.
All right, you guys that are tuning in right now, you're watching Speak Up Nashville, and this is all about Tennessee and the attack on civilian and community oversight boards. And so with those things that you've heard so far, if you're just tuning in, welcome. I would like to bring on the chair of the Community Oversight Board, Alicia Haddock, to speak more about this attack with the recent legislation that passed to Tennessee. Alicia?
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Cheryl and Ms. Sheila and Jill, just because this has been a long, hard fight. This did not start when the Tennessee legislature waged an attack on the Community Oversight Board earlier this year in January. It just didn't start. And I think what you've heard so far from Ms. Clemens Lee and from Ms. Huff and Director Fitcher is that it started before they wanted to disassemble, dismantle, abolish the Community Oversight Board. In my opinion, they simply don't want us to exist, right? And if that is the case, then it leads me to believe that they have something to hide. And so what I was thinking about, Cheryl, when you were talking about this case that, you know, may not have been known by many of us and may not have been resulted in the arrest of an officer who was a security guard and was rewarded, right? You know, I'm of the age where, you know, I listen to Tupac. And so I was saying earlier today, you know, if, you know, depending on who you are and you kill a Black person, you could be considered a hero. But what we want to make sure is that we're not rolling back time. We're not going to go back and to the way things were when the police departments and police officers police themselves. We are actively engaged in maintaining transparency, maintaining accountability of police departments. I mean, that is what they want to dismantle. That's what they want to disassemble. They want to make sure that whatever is happening behind the covers, that it continues to do and to be. But what the Metro Community Oversight Board and the department, which is led by Director Fitcher, has done is essentially worked not only on cases of misconduct, not only working to uncover things that some of you would cringe if you knew, right? And which is public. I mean, you know, we just heard of several cases. Jacquees Clemens, his death is what helped reignite something that started in the early 90s when we're talking about a community oversight board or civilian oversight of the police, right? Which has been met with opposition from the very beginning. And so now we found ourselves at a point in time where, you know, you have cases like Tyree Nichols. And right around the same time that the video was being released of the brutal beating of Tyree Nichols, the Tennessee General Assembly introduced this bill to abolish community oversight. And I would say community oversight in its most aggressive form, eliminating investigatory power, ensuring that, you know, whatever is behind the blue wall stays behind the blue wall. But what I have found out in the last few months is not only the resolve that created the Community Oversight Board, not only the resilience and the staying power and the don't quit spirit that started it, it's keeping it, it's being maintained by that same spirit. we have come against a number of assaults. Let me just go back. 134,000 people voted for the Community Oversight Board. I mean, think about how many elections do you have, or can you count on your two hands that 134,371 people voted for Amendment 1 for the Community Oversight Board. This was a phenomenal feat that many of our community grassroots organizations banded together, made sure this happened, and then in the blink of an eye, a supermajority in the Tennessee legislature decides that it can be taken away. I think, it not only is an insult, an assault on our community, in which majority of the 35 districts in Nashville, Davidson County voted in favor of the Community Oversight Board. You had 80% yes votes. 83, upwards of 83% of the voters in District 2, which is a minority community, voted to establish the Community Oversight Board. I mean, these are astonishing numbers where people came out in droves. And what's a telling part of it is that we know that everybody who voted for the Community Oversight Board wasn't Black. Everybody wasn't Black, everybody wasn't poor, you had a community come together and ensure that police accountability and oversight was mandated in this city. And, you think about how many people, how many of our foremothers and forefathers died for us to have the right, the ability to walk up to a precinct and cast our votes. But it can be taken away so quickly. I was looking at the aspect of voter suppression, and I was looking at it through the lens of my grandmother taking me to Jones School in North Nashville, where I was born, to go vote with her along with the rest of our family, because that's how much voting mattered. And then for it to be taken away so quickly, I think we have to continue to find that resolve. I think we have to continue to press back, push back on attacks that really are saying that we don't want you to exist. That is where the pushback, that is where the resolve, that is where the fight back, that is where we come together to ensure that this stops. Right? We understand that our communities are over-policed. We have the Driving While Black report, and we now have a license plate reader report that was released this past Monday by the Community Oversight Board. And it didn't tell us something that we didn't already know, that the cameras are disproportionately placed in our community, and that the majority of the hits come from the communities that we serve, that we know, that we love, that we were born in. So when is it going to stop? When are we going to say enough is enough? When are we going to come together and make sure that the people who are doing this out loud and quietly, that they can no longer do this to our communities, to our people, to the people we love, and get away with it? Police oversight is needed. We don't need to roll back the oversight. We need more oversight. We don't need to roll back the investigatory power. We need more investigatory power. And that's what we should focus on. That's what we should be fighting for. That's why we have to come together. That's why we have to stay together. That's why we need more energy. That's why we have to make sure that people who are funding programs in our community understand very well that bad policing is what aids to the erosion of our community, right? Bad policing has a major effect on our communities. And we're working so hard and then not knowing or realizing that some of what we're working against, when we're saying no to oversight, when we're saying no to LPR data, when we're saying no to all of these things, it's eroding our communities. So, I mean, at this point, we're either walking like we talk it, or we need to be quiet and just sit down. But I know the folk that I'm working with on this board, in this community, on this call, care about the community, and they want to make sure that police accountability continues on in Nashville. It continues in the state of Tennessee, and we make the mark that we've been working for so long. Dr. King talked about police accountability, oversight. This is not a new fight. This is not a new struggle, but I'm telling you, the struggle continues and we need everyone's help. We need everybody to join in this fight. We need lawyers. We need everyone to come and join in because it's happening. The assault continues to happen and we need everyone's voice in this fight. And we're not going to be reactive. We're not gonna wait till the next person gets killed. We're not gonna wait until something happens again. We have to be ready. And so the support for the Community Oversight Board, the restructuring of the Community Oversight Board, this is our problem. This is not the board's problem. This is not Metro Nashville Community Oversight's problem. This is our problem. This is a community problem. This is Nashville's problem. This is the mayor's problem. This is Metro Legal's problem. This is the preacher's problem. This is the Black church's problem. This is the judge's problem. This is everyone's problem. And so that's why we have to come together to solve it. And we have to stay resolved and we have to stay together. And so I know this is hard. It's hard. I bet if you ask people on this call who've lost their children how hard it really is, and they can tell you. But what we want to do is make sure that we stand strong, we fight back, and we continue to make a difference. And so just know that you have people fighting on your behalf, and we want you to join in. Because we need your help.
Thank you so much for that. And you guys heard it. The call is there. The call to action is there, right? One foot after the other, stand up and fight back. Okay, that's the simple task. Stand up and fight back. And so with that being said, I have the awesome opportunity again to bring on an amazing person in this fight nationally. And I want to start out by at least, showing, I'm sorry, I had it up there briefly, y'all. You guys give me a second. Showing some information. So I am going to ask Abdul from the Young Black Lawyers to come up and speak. And Abdul, if you're there, you can definitely join us. Welcome. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Christina. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you to all of you who are in this fight and are doing such important work there on the ground. My name is Abdul Dasunu. Apologies for being a few minutes late. I was just on the Roland Martin show speaking to some of the concerns we have around the Supreme Court decisions, plural, that have been so awful over the last 24 hours. Apologies for being late, but let me just share a little bit about who I am and what Y Block is all about, and share just a couple of thoughts about the work that you all are doing. So I founded the Young Black Lawyers Organizing Coalition, otherwise known as Y Block, as a law student at NYU School of Law in 2019. And our mission was then and is now to build a grassroots organizing movement of Black lawyers and law students all over the country to help protect Black voting rights. We have seen over the course of the last 2 years, some 440 voter suppression laws and policies proposed in 48 states. And that is an extension of what we've seen over the course of the last 10 years since the Shelby County v. Holder decision by the Supreme Court, which, as many of you will know, eviscerated Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was a key section. And so we wanted to come together as a network, as Black lawyers and law students just beginning our careers, to do everything that we could to step into the tradition of Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley and Fred Gray and so many others, and really do the kind of on the ground education work and advocacy work to help our communities resist and overcome voter suppression. And so we've been working in 7 states over the last couple of years. Tennessee is not one of those states, but we work wherever we're called. Our focus has been on making sure that communities have the information they need to protect their right to vote, make sure they have the information they need to successfully cast their ballot, but also to make sure they are educated and empowered around issues affecting our communities, particularly as those issues relate to democracy. At Y Block, we say Black ballots are Black futures. Black ballots are Black futures. And everything that I have heard today from you all says to me that the fight you all are fighting is around making sure that your ballot counts and that our futures are protected, because you understand the connectivity between the ballot and our futures. And so we've been working over the last 2 years. We're proud of the work that we've done. We're going to continue our movement. We're working to scale right now in anticipation not only of 2024, but of elections this year in 2023, because as I like to say, there are elections every year somewhere, particularly at the local level. And so we're actively working across the country. But let me just share a few thoughts on what I have heard and the conversations that I've had with Cheryl and Christina. It seems as though there is certainly a democracy issue here, right? That there were votes cast, there was a campaign, there were commitments made, and there was a community oversight board created. And all of that has been thrown out of the window by a political agenda. And that is a democracy concern, right? So it is both about policing and about making sure that we are holding law enforcement accountable, and about democracy, making sure that your voice matters. And so there is certainly a democracy issue here. And what I know for sure around democracy battles that I've been part of is this: the most important thing you can do is get organized. The most important thing you can do is organize. Because let me tell you, the forces of voter suppression are not concerned about your anger. They are not worried about you being mad. what they are concerned about, what starts to engender some concern is when we get organized. And far too often we get angry, but we don't get organized. And so the what I see and I hear from you is a commitment to fighting on this issue. And what I see are the sort of the seeds of a movement, of an organizing movement. And I just want to share a few things that I think are important in that movement. The first is you have to have the capacity to do the legislative and legal analysis to figure out where the power points are, right? So in terms of thinking about what your ask is, what your demands are, you've got to know where to focus and target those demands. And that means you've got to look at the bill the legislation that was passed to see exactly what what it does in terms of taking power out of the hands of certain political actors or leaving power in the hands of certain political actors. You need somebody who can do that legislative and policy analysis, right? So that you know where to aim your demands. You know where to aim your ask. Right? You know exactly what you are asking for, right? Because it may be that in a case like this, the mayor has some authority. It may be that the city council has some authority. And this is just me speaking broadly, not about this specific situation. And it may be that they don't, that they've been stripped of that authority. And so you really just want to know where the power points are in this conversation so that you know where to aim your demands. So you want to have somebody who can do the legislative and policy analysis. You need also to have somebody who's thinking about how you're organizing and mobilizing at the grassroots. And I know all of you do that work, but I would really set up a standing committee of folks who are focused on community organizing, grassroots organizing, because part of this, it's not enough for those of you who are on this call to lift your voices. You need to speak as a chorus. And you want to make sure that the community is behind you. And so there's some education work that needs to happen. What was the Community Oversight Board? Why was it important to making sure that we have community safety in our neighborhoods and making sure that we're not brutalized by law enforcement? What happened when we voted in 2018 for this Community Oversight Board? And then what happened when the state legislature suppressed our voices at the end of the legislative term? You want to educate people about that, because they're often we make the assumption that people are following these issues closely. And what I've learned is that people have busy lives. They have a lot going on, and they're facing a lot in their day-to-day lives. And so you really want to take the message directly to people. So the work that we do as a network is we actually go into Black churches, we go into Black barbershops and Black beauty salons, we talk to fraternities and sororities, we go into small businesses, we work with neighborhood associations, we go directly to where people are. We've gone to barber colleges, we go directly to where people are to educate them on the issues. And most often what we hear from them is we had no idea. Nobody told us. And so you want to make sure you have a community organizing thrust that is focused on education, right? So you want to have the legislative policy analysis so you know where to aim your asks and your demands. You want to have the community organizing piece. You want to have the messaging and media piece. And that's critical. My message and media advisor, Taryn Brown, is on the call. She works with us to make sure that our message is tight. Because often what happens when you have a movement, a broad movement, and you've got the community organized and mobilized and everybody's invested in the issue, is that folks start talking and they're not on one accord. And so you want to make sure that everybody is on one accord in terms of the message you're driving. And so you want to have your talking points ready. When you go to meet with elected officials, you want to have those talking points ready. When you go to talk to the media, you want to have those talking points ready. When you write op-eds, You want to have those talking points ready. So you want to make sure you have somebody who's focused on drafting and disseminating talking points so that everybody's on the same page and we're asking for the same thing. And then the final thing that I'll say is you want to be imaginative. The challenge that we have in this moment that we're in is that a lot of the sort of traditional legal routes have, they've frankly been undermined. And we have courts that are not as responsive as they ought to be to our communities. But that does not mean we give up. What that means is we press our concerns, we press our issues. And so I want to encourage you to be imaginative about the demands and the asks that you're making and how you are presenting the concerns. So what I heard here today is that there's in many ways, there's a pattern and practice around police brutality in the community. And that's the reality in so many of our communities. And yes, there may be a pitch that you make to the Department of Justice, but there also may be some innovative ways that you can really surface what people have been confronting, right? So there are these things called, and I just want to kind of put this out there. There are these things called people's audits, right? So a people's audit is basically the community taking a look at what some of the issues are in terms of policing, and the community identifying those who are able to testify about their experiences, and the community putting those experiences together in a report, and the community then is presenting that report to elected officials or presenting that report to the Department of Justice. And so, that's just an example, and that's not me advising you to do that, just an example of some of the sort of imagination that you could bring to this question of how do we really make clear the challenges that people have been facing and how important this community oversight board is. And so I want to encourage you to consider those things, to consider the importance of getting organized. I will tell you that we are active everywhere. But I certainly want to see, working with Cheryl, working with Christina, how we can support your efforts in a way that makes sense. And so, I want to encourage you, stay at it, remain engaged in the fight. And I'm a big believer that it's a challenging time. It is a challenging time. We had a bad affirmative action decision yesterday. We had a bad student loan decision today. We had a bad decision on discrimination against LGBTQIA folks. We've just had so many bad decisions in the last 24 hours. It's a challenging time. And often I'm asked by people, how do you stay hopeful? And the answer that I give is that action breeds hope. That if you want to be hopeful, take action. Action breeds hope. And then the other thing I found is that hope breeds action. So it's a virtuous cycle. It's a virtuous cycle. So I want to encourage you in your efforts. I want to encourage you, if you're interested in our work outside of this, yblock.org is our website, ybloc.org. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have or concerns, listen to any concerns you might have, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We really appreciate the great work that you're doing. It's a huge undertaking locally, let alone statewide and nationally, so it's much appreciated. And we do have a question. Anaya has her hand up, Jill has her hand up, and then I'll let you go ahead and start, Anaya.
Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you, Team Nashville, for inviting your local New York chapter friends. I was just really curious, Mr. Abdul.
Okay, so we lost
you hear
you
me?
for a second. Okay, yes, we can
Is that
hear
better?
you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm in New York City as well, and I'm not sure if you're in New York Station or if you're down in Nashville. Either way, we're working with Christina, we're working with Cheryl and the rest of the Nashville family in regards to foster care. And I didn't know if we could, extend an olive branch to speak more to you, offline about the work that we're doing. And that's how we met, President of Nashville Chapter, Cheryl Hoff and Miss Christina Laster. But we have a really huge problem with the foster care community here. And of course, with all these policing issues, all of it goes hand in hand. So I would love for us to stay in touch. We're working with a council member locally by the name of Councilman Kevin C. Riley, who also has the Dad Gang and a number of platforms for Black men. And I implore that we do work together, not just in regards to foster care, but potentially to get more Black men involved in some of the movements that are happening here in New York City. I know that was heavy, so I hope you got all of that, brother. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Anaya.
Thank you so much for your question. The short or the long of my answer is yes, I would love to be connected, and I would love to learn more about the work that you're doing. I am based in Texas, but I have a Dallas, Texas, but I went to law school in New York and still have a footprint there in New York. And so I'm very tuned into the issues that are happening there. So I'd love to connect. And we have quite a few Y Block folks in New York. And so I would love to stay connected.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna go over to Jill to answer her question.
Hi, thank you for sharing so much information, Mr. Abdul. I have a question because, of course, I don't think what's happening in Nashville is too out of the ordinary for the kind of people that we're dealing with up there at the State House. But I think the issue here is preemption. And, and of course, preemption for the Tennessee Constitution it can have some very serious ramifications in trying to really pursue litigation long term to protect the rights of voters. And I guess I've been hearing that this is going on in a lot of the red states where they're coming in. We just saw that happen in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi specifically. And so my question is, when you have these preemptive laws on the books or this, this ability to have somewhat absolute power over local government, like how do you, what could your strategy be to even begin a fight as it pertains to preemption?
It's a great question, and I'm going to answer that directly, but I want to first say something that I should have said at the beginning. Nothing I say here is legal advice. I'm not your attorney. Please consult your attorney. I'm sure you have I know you have a tremendous legal team at NAN National, so please consult them and engage with them directly. So now let me answer, Jill, your question just broadly about strategy. I think you're absolutely right. What we are seeing is the local communities are becoming the battleground for particularly large metro areas are becoming the battlegrounds across the country because those large metro areas are typically diverse, typically majority people of color. And so you'll see progressive policies happening at the large local metro level that are then attacked by the state leadership. And we're seeing that pretty much everywhere. I mean, in my home state of Texas, just as an example, the state legislature at the end of the last legislative session, it seems like a lot of just horrible stuff happened right at the end of the sessions. They passed a bill that gave the state officials the authority to remove the local elections officer in one county. That one county is Harris County, which happens to be Houston, which happens to be very diverse, very fast growing, and again, where you see a lot of progressive people of color political power. And so this is happening all over the place. I think it comes back to the solution. the strategic plan comes back to how are we educating our communities about these issues? Because ultimately, this is about making sure that we maximize our power. This is about making sure that our democratic voices are heard. And so we want to make sure that the key is to educate our communities, right? To know that their rights are under attack and to vote, right? To vote on behalf of their rights. And I don't really, I know it sounds simplistic, right? That voting is the solution, but the truth of the matter is voting is the solution. And we've got to make sure that we're articulating our hopes and dreams for our communities, for our states, and for our country. And then once we vote, right, it doesn't stop there. We've got to make sure we remain engaged. So I think the solution really starts with starting to build that education and that understanding at the community and local level of the fight we're facing, and then harnessing that energy to make sure that people vote. And one of the things that we've done as progressives over the course of the last, 25 years or so, is we have neglected a focus on local politics. We have neglected a focus on state politics. And that's how the forces of voter suppression have built up supermajorities in the state house. And so we've got to make sure we're doing the education work so that we're not neglecting local and state politics.
Thank you.
And next, we're going to go to Alicia Haddock, who has her hand up as well.
Okay, so Abdul, thank you, number one, for coming on and sharing with us. This has been just a tough time, whirlwind, just because everything is happening simultaneously, right? From federal, state, local, we're just at the brunt of, just this whipping stick, it's just tearing us up. And so how do we stay encouraged and how do we stay together, right? And so we understand that a strategy is needed. We, when we're talking about, let me just say, for instance, the bill that they introduced and that we have now, very poorly written. We have legal, at least a legal opinion on, just the bill itself and how it was very inconsistent with best practices in law enforcement oversight. We're very well versed in what's going on. But as we are shaping this message, so we can tell it completely and accurately to our community, right? How do we stay, and I'm talking about collectively, not individually, but collectively stay encouraged, and how do we collectively keep that message, and how do we, really kind of keep that resolve that's needed, because this fight will be long, right? It will be long, it will be hard, because we are fighting, powers that didn't just start with this General Assembly, right? Any kind of insight into, tools to use to stay together?
Well, it's a great question. And it's an important one, because you're absolutely right. The fight will be long. I think what I would say is it's important that we remain reminded, that we remind ourselves that we have been here before. And that in many ways, our sojourn in this country has been one of continuous struggle. And maybe that's not encouraging. Maybe that's not what I need to say. But on some level, I think it is, because we have always had to fight, and we have always fought. And we have always won. And I think it's important for us to keep that top of mind, right? So I work on voting rights issues. I work on democracy issues. And I always take people back to the Reconstruction era of the late 19th century. And during the Reconstruction era, you saw rising Black political participation because you had these reconstructive policies aimed at making sure Black people could participate. You saw Black people achieving parity on the voting rolls. You saw Black state legislators helping to draft Reconstruction era constitutions. You had a real kind of liberating of Black political voice during the Reconstruction era. And then right after it, right, in the early 20th century, you see a backlash, you see a reaction against all of that by the forces of voter suppression. And they used a lot of the same tactics that they're using today, right? So I always make note of the fact that the public pretext that they use to justify things like poll taxes and whites only primaries was fighting voter fraud. And that's the same thing we're hearing today. So time has rolled on, the players have changed, but the playbook is still very much the same. The playbook of voter suppression is still very much the same. And it's that playbook that we have seen on display there in Nashville. It's that playbook that we have seen on display across the country, right? But the most important thing to note about that is that we have always resisted. Our communities have always resisted. We have always stood up. One of my favorite Supreme Court cases of all time was Smith versus Allwright. And Smith versus Allwright is not law school, so I won't go into it. But Smith versus Allwright was the case that outlawed the whites only primary. And it was argued by Thurgood Marshall. And the plaintiffs in that case were everyday Black folks, right? Facing a lot more than we're facing in terms of violence, right? And they stood up. They stood up for their rights and they won. And they won, and it changed this country. And Thurgood Marshall, who argued Brown versus the Board of Education, that seminal legal decision of the 20th century, Thurgood Marshall said Smith versus Allwright was his most important case. Because of that point I made earlier, Black ballots, Black futures. If you get democracy right, you have a chance to get everything else right. We then started mobilizing and organizing because even after that, we faced barriers to the ballot. We started mobilizing and organizing in places like Selma, right? And we were able to secure the gains of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I say all of this to say that when you remember where we've come from, it's hard to be discouraged about our ability to stand and fight because we have always stood and fought and we have always won. So I want to encourage us, history matters. That's why this attack against our history is so troubling and so challenging, right? Because if we don't know our history, then we won't know the power we really possess. So we've got to know our history. So I would encourage that. I don't know if that answered your question, but we've got to keep that top of mind. And so I would just lift up examples of how the community has organized. And the truth of the matter is, I'm sure you could tell me that the fight for the legislation in the first place was not an easy fight. So you got to remember how far we've come and continue to draw from those lessons.
Thank you, Exum. Oh, I'm sorry, Alicia, were you good? Okay. Exum, your hand is raised.
Yes, blessings. Give me 1 second, you all. Thank you for this platform and thank you for this conversation. I concur with everything that's just been said. And my take on this is we're looking at an all hands on deck approach. One of the things that I do, for those of you who, some of you know, some of you don't know, I work in the media. So I see things from sometimes 5,000 foot distance. And so what I mean by all hands on decks is going to be, as we saw what the Supreme Court did today and the previous couple of days. We're going to need, I'm going to borrow my friend Earl Jordan's business name, which is we're going to need partners in the struggle. We're not going to be able to do this alone. We're going to have to partner with the LGBTQ community. We're going to have to partner with Hispanics. We're going to have to also partner with other people who do not look like us, who do not share the same zip code as us, and who don't think that they have something to lose in this fight, and find a commonality among all of us to pull us all in together, because we're in the fight of our lives for this generation. Because one of the things I saw today that I saw, and I know no knock against the Republicans, but with this Supreme Court striking down a sort of gutting affirmative action the way it did, and then with the ruling that came today about the lady who owns the bakery, you saw a celebration on the right as people begin to lose their rights. And you see, in particular, people who are running for the president of the United States, the presidency of the United States on the right, celebrating these things. So that is a preemptive look of what's more to come if we don't band together and push back. Those of us who live in the Nashville area, we see it already with the gerrymandering, with as we see them trying to undermine the board here, the oversight board. All these things are the things that we're going to have to come together collectively, not just as a community, but also with other organizations, because there are strength in numbers. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us to stand up and to push back. And so with that, I digress. I thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. So we're going to go over to Cheryl, and she'll have the last question for Abdul, and then we're going to hear again from Jill. Cheryl?
So thank you once again. I really appreciate you coming on and enlightening us on our rights and what we need to do to come together. And some of the questions that you were asking, that you were saying, is what made us want to have a community oversight. Another question you asked is how important the oversight is to us. So the first one, I don't know if you were on when Miss Clemens Lee was on, but she this was initiated because her son was shot and killed by a Metro police officer. And then another young man by the name of Daniel Hambrick was shot and killed by the Metro police officer. Daniel Hambrick was in his vehicle and the police saw him on the interstate. He didn't see him. He just saw a white vehicle on the interstate and he started following him. And because he could not catch him and he lost the vehicle on the interstate, he was upset. That's one thing. And then when he went into the area and saw the car again, he don't know who was driving. He don't know who was in the car because everyone got out of it. But Daniel saw this police officer coming towards the house and he took off running. And because he started running, the police ran after him. And when he ran after him, he could not catch this young man. He could not catch him. And he shot him. He, once again, planted his foot, aimed his gun, and shot this young man. He said because he was in danger of his life and the community. We don't know for sure if this young man had a gun or not. This is just what he said. But my own opinion and of just watching the attitude and what happens with the police officer, they get upset because first they can't catch them. Second of all, because they talk back. Third of all is because they say, I have the badge and I'm in charge. And so they get upset and they shoot and kill our children. And the reason why I open this up to everybody everywhere, and we have some viewing on Facebook that's watching and listening, and we have some on LinkedIn and other places, because if it's happening here, you better be aware it's coming there too. And They have to have a model city where we're going to see how it happened, what we can do here, and then we're going to pass it on everywhere. Because the Oversight Community Board was getting too close to finding out the truth and the corruption in Metro Nashville Police Department, that's the reason why they snuck in and put this in effect and made this happen while everybody was grieving and going through the situation that happened to Tyrese Nichols in Memphis. And that's when they eased this in here and then shut it down. But we cannot stand by and let this happen. We have to fight. We got to keep fighting, because my fear is when I'm not here anymore, who's going to make sure that my grandchildren are okay? Who's going to make sure that my great-grandchildren are okay? So we have to fight now like our ancestors fought. And that's the reason why when I heard this, I was pissed. I was mad, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make them hear and let them know that we've been here and we're here to fight. Thank you. Ms. Clemens is here also, and I just wanted her, once we get finished, just to let them know, her reason for the oversight and from what happened with her son, why does she feel that the oversight is important? And once we, before we wrap up.
Let me just say quickly on that. I think you just spoke so powerfully. And part of what I was saying earlier is it's important that we make sure that the community understands at the same level of depth that you do what's really at stake here. That what we have to do is make sure we take what you just shared with me and share it in a way that is digestible and accessible to the community, so that the community can organize with you. So that's what's important. And then in terms of doing that type of work, it's not enough to just say, here's the issue. You got to say, here are the 3 steps you can take today to address that issue. And that's why it's important to know what your ask is and where you're aiming that ask. So you can lay it out in an easy, digestible way for the community. But absolutely, what moves people is when you talk about your own lived experiences and when you talk about how this issue actually addresses and impacts them on a day-to-day, in their day-to-day lives. That's what's going to move people.
Thank you so much, Abdul. Again, you have been hearing from Abdul of the Young Black Lawyers Organizing Coalition. And Abdul, if anyone has something that they want to connect with you guys about, what is the best way for them to contact you all?
Best way is to, if you want to partner with us, go to our website at yblock.org. And actually, that's probably the best way to go about reaching us generally. yblock.org. There's a form there on the website you can fill out, and it comes directly to us. And so fill it out, let us know who you are, where you're from, and how you want to partner and collaborate, and we'll reach back out to you.
Okay, and is there anything that you would like to say to the general public before we hear back from Joe Fitcher?
Nothing else. Thank you so much. Thank you all for having me. Thank you for reaching out to me. And thank you for the work that you're doing. And it's so important. Future generations are going to look back and say, this was the group that really pushed us toward more justice and equity. So thank you so much.
Thank you again. And thanks to Taryn Brown for joining as well. We really appreciate your support. Jill, it's your turn now.
Yeah, I've just digested a lot. I'm glad that Ms. Sheila is here back on the line. I wanted to talk a little bit about where we are today. And then I just wanted to say to Ms. Sheila, I've been around for a long time. And when she first, when we first started hiring people. I met with the Community Oversight Now organization, and I told her something. She may not remember it, but I told her that I was going to keep fighting into the end. And she said, well, they're going to be doing this and this. And I was like, I figured they would. But until you walk in this thing and experience it like she and the other organizers did, it just doesn't seem real to you. Like the obstruction, the roadblocks, from one step to the other, the constant pushing, and trying to protect the rights of the people of Nashville to be able to come and voice their concerns about how they've been treated, mishandled, talked to, or any of the other complaints that have come our way. And so I am just really thankful to be serving our community in this way, and appreciative of Miss Sheila and the rest of all of the community organizations to entrust us to do this work. Well, what I'll tell you where we are today, because we want to also give you some information, and that is, of course, you all have been aware and have heard us talk about an ordinance that is passing through Metro, through the council. And the reason why that ordinance is passing through Metro currently is because if we don't do anything, October the 29th, we will have nothing in place at all. It will go away based on how the legislation is written. And so I will say that we have struggled. I'm just going to be very transparent and say we have struggled through a process with Metro Legal. We have fussed and we have raised concerns. We have talked about, them not really standing up for the Community Oversight Board, not addressing the issues, publicly and being transparent about it, while we all sit back and watch them open up litigation cases against the airport authority, the fairgrounds, the city council. I mean, just one thing after the other that they feel those are revenue driven agencies. And, they have put that before what the people wanted, which is to have a community oversight board the way that it's structured now. And so when they, we had to actually hire outside counsel to even get them to talk to us, right? They weren't really responding to our in-house attorney. And so we have had to go out and get outside counsel just to be the mediator between the two agencies. And it's really disheartening that we as government employees, as a board, still have to go through this in 2023, where our voices are being suppressed and not heard. And then if you speak too loudly about it, then there's also this thing where you feel like you don't want to cause any more trouble. But I'm reminded of what John Lewis said, and that is we are working through this and it is good trouble. And so there's an ordinance that's passing through. We have asked that some amendments, myself and chair asked that some amendments be added to it. I don't know what Metro Legal is going to do, if they're going to hold this process up and stall. But what I will tell you is starting tomorrow, the police department that Metro Legal instructed them, or either they have decided that first thing on July 1, they will no longer give us access to police officers to interview them for cases. And the second thing is that they will not give us records that are confidential. So the process and the pushback and all of these things is happening really quickly. And so we are of the mindset that we have until October the 29th. Well, it's really the 27th because the 29th is a Sunday, but to reconstitute and to move forward. They want us to be called the Metro Community Review Board. And what they're basically saying is, we don't know if they're going to cooperate, but we're going to keep pushing and meeting and doing all the things that we said that we were going to do. I don't know what that looks like. We got a bunch of interviews done yesterday. We closed up a lot of things today with just business as usual. But there's also been what I call, little voices of dissension about our budget and what somebody else could do. They could take our budget away and they could do this and they could do that. And a lot of this is going to rely on who the next mayor is and what council and the council members. And so I would encourage each one of you to be very diligent about who the mayor should, like talking to people about the mayor, talking about that mayoral race, asking those candidates, do they support the COB? Because it's going to be important for after when October comes, we will have a brand new council and we will have a brand new mayor. And we don't know very specifically what that will look like. I will tell you that as this ordinance is passing through council, with the additional amendments in it, that we were, anyway, so the additional amendments that I don't think people were happy with, that will move through the council on Thursday, the 6th. We are asking that as many people that could come out to the council for public comment to voice your support for the Community Oversight Board, for the amendments, which we will get that information out to you, and let the council that's there now know how important this is. I want to say the irony of all of this is that every single one of those council members and who are mayoral candidates wants your vote, even in the midst of us having a suppression of the votes issue. And it just doesn't make sense to me. They're begging for your votes. They're begging for your votes. But what are they saying about the suppression of the vote that happened back in November of 2018? And that is important to me. My vote matters to me. Every single person I talk to that voted, they ready to get it popping. It just doesn't seem like we have, the support. It's so many things to deal with when you're thinking about litigation in regards to voter suppression issues. And so I'm so thankful to be here today to talk about that, to get information on how we can help. We're a governmental agency, and so I'm really limited on some of the things that I can do as an individual governmental agency within a government that's not supporting this for us. Metro Legal said very explicitly to me and the other chair that was here before, Ms. Haddock, was that they are not going to pursue litigation on behalf of the people. That was what they said very explicitly. That's what the law director said to me. And so that question, they're not going to even entertain that. And we see that every single day because they have entertained a lawsuit against the fairgrounds, the stadium deal, the airport authority, the sports authority. I mean, just one thing after the other. But not and those were not referendums, right? Those boards that they're talking, those are just boards that they're fighting for their seats. We're talking about the suppression of 134,371 voters. And so this is not about a board and a commission seat, right? That's what they're fighting for, right? They're fighting to get their seats back. We're talking about suppressing the majority, votes of the majority of people in certain districts, votes. And so I'm really concerned about it. I know that this is happening throughout many of the southern states, the red states, especially like we are a blue dot in a sea of red. That is happening in real time in Alabama, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi. Of course, in Florida as well. And so, even the Carolinas. And so I understand that we have an uphill battle, but we can't do this alone. We can just stand for what we know is right within the confines of our little bit of, the little bit of ask that we asked for, because the way that they wrote that bill, which is not a great written bill, it now lies in the hands of Metro Council, Metro Legal, and the chief of police, as well as the mayor, right? So the bill is written. We're not going to be able to do anything but sue them. But while this is going through the Metro Council, who do we hold accountable? The Metro Legal Department, the mayor's office, and the council, and the chief of police. The chief of police is moving forward with making certain that, if he didn't have to agree to the officers not being interviewed, but he did, okay? Because that's what they told us, that we no longer have access to officers to interview them about misconduct cases. That lies heavily on the chief of police. The fact that we can't get access to records possibly will lie heavily on the chief of police. So there's some complicity here and some collusion, and we can't forget that it's all of them. It's not just one, it's every single part. And so we need to look at that where we are today, and what we can do is on Thursday, July the 6th, and then I think it's the 22nd, or I'll look at the exact date for the next, that's the third reading, is we need your support to come out and let them know how frustrated, angry, disappointed in what they're doing, and demand that they pass this ordinance with the amendments in it. So thank you.
And I can add to the second reading will be July 6th, Thursday, July 6th, and then Tuesday, July 18th.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, and that is at 6:30 at the council.
Thank you for sharing that information. And, can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, so I want to infuse some hope and encouragement at this point in the discussion, because I want you guys to understand the value of the power you have in this conversation right here, right? I'm in California. Anaya A is in New York. Abdul is in Texas, and we paying attention. So when you talk about, am I my brother and sister's keeper? Yes, I am. Because we cannot let a collective effort of oppression, discrimination, and all of that stuff take place to our brothers and sisters in the South while we comfortable on the West Coast, or while we comfortable in the East. It is all of our problem. And so I want you to understand that we have power within our community to be able to support what is happening to our brothers and sisters. We don't need to look far off, y'all. When we got a collected and concerted attack on our community in various places, we need to join together as we are now and be concerted, just as concerted in our pursuit of justice, because we're on the right side of this issue. Okay. And so with that being said, just want to encourage people to show up for that meeting, to be there and be present, show your physical presence. Let me tell you how people's physical presence can shut down a whole meeting sometimes, make people just pause because they see you there and they know that you're serious, right? And after I have Miss Clemens Lee come back on, I'm also going to share something that we can do from our respective locations. Just because we're not in Nashville don't mean we can't at least have the appropriate entity perhaps check in on this problem. So I'm going to share what you can do if you're not in Nashville to support our brothers and sisters out there in Tennessee. Miss Clemens Lee, can you please go ahead and share?
Yes. I'm afraid that once this community oversight board, let me just say that if it goes completely away, the police is going to get even more trigger happy. And that bothers me. It bothers me in my soul. I'm afraid for my family, everybody's family, all the community, because it's going to be a war on us. And we can't let that happen. You know, when blacks are killing blacks, they don't too much investigate because that's what they want. And when it's the police killing us, you know, it's an awful feeling. You know, my son was 31 with 2 sons, and he was shot in the back 3 times, and they covered it up. All of them, the DA, the police, everybody, they covered it up. And you know, something's got to be done. We got to protect our people at all costs. At all costs. Just like back in the day, how our ancestors, some had to die in order to get stuff set in place for us. And now we've got to do the same thing for our children and our grandchildren and their children. They're depending on us to make it where they can live in this world safely and don't have to worry about the police continuing to kill us. This is a fight, and like I used to tell Khan before the Community Oversight Board won, what is for us is going to be for us, and can't no man stop it or block it. They can try, but it's not going to happen, because if it's God's will, it's going to continue. We knew when we won that election that the fight was just beginning. Now it makes me think with the person that was Metro Legal, was he there to really give legal advice, or was he there to listen to see how close the board was getting to exposing what they were doing? Because why back away from the Community Oversight Board now? That raises a question with me. Because if you're there for the board, then you should still be for the board, not backing away. As far as Chief Drake is concerned, no, at the time that my son was murdered, he wasn't the chief. But I knew before anybody that John Drake was going to be the police chief, because I had met with Mayor Cooper and the way he was talking, and I asked him, so have you already decided that Drake is going to be the police chief? He said, no, I just need you to sit down. I'm not sitting down with any of them because I don't approve of it. And I've always said, as soon as Drake decide to be on his people's side, they were going to get rid of him. And he's just proving my point now that he doesn't want what's best for his community. His strings are being pulled. We got to continue what we started. When we won on November the 6th of 2018, we played a song, Ain't No Stopping Us Now. We got to remember that. Ain't no stopping us now. You want to fight? We're going to fight. We'll get down and dirty with you if we have to. But we must fight. We must fight for my son, Daniel Habert, D. Knox, and the list goes on and on. And those who even haven't even experienced it yet, and it may be coming to their door. We got to fight for them. We got to let people know we're not sitting down. And if we get out there, like the guy said, we got to organize, because that's what we did to get the board. We organized. We didn't sleep. We pressed forward. And It takes us getting out there again, going door to door, holding rallies, and educating everybody on what's going on and what's to happen. I truly believe we will win. We shall live and not die. I say it's time to go to work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Time to go to work. And so with that, Alicia, can you please repeat the next and upcoming meeting where everybody needs to show up? And that's the first next step that we take in, is that everybody needs to get to that meeting. And if you feel like you want to be there, but you don't have a way, reach out, right? And say, hey, I saw you in the meeting, or reach out to Nan, Cheryl Huff at Nan, or someone in this meeting and say, I want to be there, but I really just don't even know, how I'm gonna get there, whatever that may look like, right? I don't want nothing to hinder you from being present.
That's right.
Okay, so Alicia, if you can give that information again, that would be great.
Yeah, so Thursday, July 6th, at 6:30 at the Metro Courthouse. That's when the council meeting will be. It will be the second reading of the ordinance along with the amendments. And so we're asking everybody to come out. Our churches have vans, Christina, we have modes of transportation. We are asking people to show up. We want that council meeting packed, because this is our children's lives, our neighbors, our community, everything is at stake. And so that's July 6th. It's normally on Tuesdays, but Tuesday is July 4th. And so they have moved the council meeting to Thursday, July 6th at 6:30. The next meeting is Tuesday, July 18th at 6:30. And so this is scheduled to be our second and third reading of the ordinance, of the ordinance and the amendments. And so we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to hear from their council members, to hear from the people that are that we voted in, right? And we voted in some of these positions. We want to know their position. We want to know how they feel about something that 134,000 people voted for. And so we hope that everyone is able to come out, and we can do some organizing and ensuring that the people are present on these important dates, July 6th, July 18th.
All right. And then for those of you that are not able to be present because you're like me in another state, like I said, I wanted to share with you, listen, I'm the know your rights person, and some people get irritated about that, but I don't. Because don't wait until you're violated and then try to figure out your rights. And if you think it can't happen to you, that's an arrogant thought. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you think, well, that's about somebody else, has nothing to do with me. No, it has to do with you, because if, I shared this example of power. Who has it? For whose benefit is it had? And at whose expense? And if you're always expendable, then you need to understand that your rights are being violated or you're conceding them. Okay. So here we are right here, as you can see, at the United States Department of Justice, which is a federal public funded government entity. Okay. And if you believe you or someone else has experienced a civil rights violation, please tell us what happened. Here's the form. You can do this on your phone. I'm on my iPad, right? And I just want to show you the categories, right? Submit a complaint. And look at this civil rights violation portals right here. Here's where you can submit a complaint, and let's read this list. Work, school, housing, voting. Stores and businesses, public spaces, public benefits, government services, and more, right? So if you believe that entire people are being discriminated against with regards to their rights, you see right here, it says, if you believe you or someone else. And they even give you the opportunity to fill out the form, and you are not required to provide your names. For those of you that are just, getting activated, and maybe you're a little bit concerned about that, but I want you to utilize this process. I don't want you to say, I'm over here, I don't know how to help, right? And if you are somewhere else and you have family in Tennessee, get on the phone with them and let them know what is going on. This is going to be a recorded video after we come off of live, and so it's shareable. If you're in the state, call your neighbor, tell them they need to see what is happening and understand what is taking place. Right? Thank you. I appreciate that comment in the chat. I was not aware. And so we have to exercise what is within our rights to do and not continue to concede them. And if that's asking the Department of Justice to launch some type of investigation, then you know what, as a citizen, then put that in this chat. When you go through here, you put that in. Okay. And believe me, that is what needs to be done. All of these things need to be done because it's a concerted attack, and there is just oppression taking place, but we are not going to just allow ourselves to be oppressed without pulling every lever and pushing back against the enemy and the wickedness. I'm just going to call it what it is. We keep on talking in slight terminologies and, cute little epithets. No, this is wickedness. Straight up evil. Okay. And maybe we're dealing with people that have to have a bigger enforcement entity over them to do what's right, just, and fair. Now, we can't legislate heart changes, but we can definitely look at legislation and legislating justice. So I'm putting a call of action out to our national viewers to fill out this form. And I'm putting a call out to our people that are present in Tennessee watching this to be at that meeting. That's the first step. The next thing is, I know Cheryl had to leave, but she left her 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 ending message that she definitely will be posting and sharing from NAN Middle Tennessee, another meeting, so that we could begin more of the community education that is necessary for the boots on the ground, the impacted persons, to engage in this warfare, let's call it what it is, in the appropriate way that is needed. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing, and I want to allow for any questions that you may have. Anyone with any questions or feedback? All right. What brings me joy at night, and I have to say this is how I sleep, knowing that my children and grandchildren do have hope for the future, is to know who the global majority is. Okay. So I wanted to share that with y'all. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your night. Organize, advocate. We're not giving up and we're not backing down. And so thank you for all of those who are viewing from whatever platform. We definitely want to hear from you, and be looking at the NAN Middle Tennessee. Check out the Tennessee COB. Listen, nobody goes to the veterinarian to get advice about landscaping. Okay, maybe, I'm just saying. So this is what you guys need to do. If you need information about what's happening to the COB, you have Alicia, the chair here, and Jill, the director. They have offered tons of information. So there doesn't need to be any confusion, because you have the sources of that information, credible sources of information. Ask them. Okay, go on their website, find out. All right. And so with that being said, I thank you all. Peace and blessings to you all. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night.
You
Bye.
too.
Strong damaging winds, not to mention large hail.
All right. Sorry. I was on multiple devices. Let me end the recording.